Ethan Carter sat alone in his dimly lit apartment, the low hum of the city seeping through the cracked blinds. The air was thick with cigarette smoke as he flipped through a stack of government files he shouldn't have. His fingers trembled, though his eyes burned with determination. Ethan muttered, "They've buried it so deep, but the truth is bleeding through the cracks." His pulse quickened as he spotted a blurred photograph of a metallic disc hovering over a barren desert. Scribbled notes in the margins hinted at cover-ups and erased witnesses. Ethan whispered, "If even half of this is real, then humanity has been living a lie." The floor creaked, and he froze, scanning the shadows. The loneliness of his pursuit pressed heavily on his shoulders, but he pushed aside fear. He thought of the countless nights haunted by unanswered questions, voices in radio static, and reports that disappeared overnight. Ethan clenched his jaw, vowing to unearth what the government fought so hard to hide. He said softly, "They can silence others, but they won't silence me." Ethan replayed the strange late-night broadcast on his old radio, static crackling through the frequencies. A distorted voice whispered coordinates and warnings, disappearing into the noise as quickly as it came. Ethan leaned closer, heart hammering, convinced it was no accident. He scribbled the numbers down, whispering, "Someone out there knows." His mind raced with the possibilities of secret transmissions slipping through government filters. For years he had searched, but this felt different, deliberate, urgent, dangerous. The walls of his apartment pressed inward as paranoia mounted. He glanced to the blinds, swearing he saw movement outside. He muttered, "They're already watching." Still, the voice in the static haunted him, daring him to keep listening. Ethan's obsession deepened, knowing the message wasn't meant for the world, it was meant for him. The next day, Ethan met Claire Morgan, his reluctant ally, in a shadowed cafe corner. Claire, a 35-year-old investigative journalist, pushed her glasses up nervously, whispering, "You shouldn't be digging this deep." Ethan's expression hardened as he slid the photograph across the table. She froze, recognizing the danger instantly. "They'll come for you," she said, her voice trembling. Ethan replied, "Then let them come. The truth deserves light." She shook her head, torn between fear and duty. The cafe buzzed faintly with chatter, but the air between them was heavy with tension. Claire finally sighed. "If you're right, the cost will be more than you think." Their uneasy alliance was sealed not by trust, but by necessity. That night, Ethan returned to his apartment and found a note slid under his door. His pulse quickened as he read, "Stop before it's too late." He looked around, but the hallway was empty. A chill ran through him, and the memory of the broadcast voice echoed in his ears. He muttered, "Someone doesn't want me getting closer." Suddenly, a soft knock rattled the door. He froze, staring at the handle, waiting, listening. The knock came again, lighter this time, then silence. He ripped the note into pieces, jaw clenched, fear wrestling with determination. "Too late for warnings," Ethan whispered. "The truth already has me." Ethan stood before his mirror, exhaustion etched into his face, but his eyes still burned with resolve. He muttered, "Every lie has a crack, every secret bleeds." His reflection felt almost like another man, one driven past sanity. He stuffed files, photographs, and his notebook into a worn leather bag. He thought of Claire's warning, the voice in the static, and the note under his door. Yet his obsession burned stronger than his fear. Ethan whispered, "This isn't just about them hiding the truth. This is about whether I can live knowing I turned away." With that vow, he stepped into the night, the city waiting with unseen dangers. Ethan Carter stood outside the marble government building, rain streaking down its cold facade. His coat clung to him as thunder rolled overhead, a reminder that nature itself seemed unsettled. Inside, he confronted Senator Richard Harlow, a 55-year-old man with silvered hair and sharp eyes that hid more than they revealed. "Harlow," said calmly, "you're meddling in matters far beyond you, Mr. Carter." Ethan's jaw tightened, his voice steady but fierce. "The truth belongs to the people, not buried in locked vaults." Harlow leaned closer, whispering, some truths would burn the world down. The weight of those words pressed against Ethan's chest. He knew this was not a threat but a warning carved from power. Yet, fear only fueled his determination. As the storm cracked outside, Ethan swore silently he would not stop until the vault of secrets was open. Hours later, Ethan sat in his cluttered apartment, a large map spread across his desk. Red string connected newspaper clippings, UFO sightings, and vanishing witnesses. The coordinates from the radio transmission glared back at him. Ethan whispered, "They lead to the desert." His eyes burned as he traced a line between classified photographs and erased government reports. Each connection painted a darker truth. Claire Morgan's voice rang in his head, urging caution, yet his obsession was stronger. He said aloud, "The patterns are too precise to be coincidence." A file marked Operation Silence lay half open, its contents confirming what his gut already knew. The government had buried the encounters, but the web was unraveling, and Ethan was at the center of it. The following evening, Ethan met Daniel Cross, a 40-year-old academic with a disarming smile, who presented himself as an ally. They sat in a quiet library alcove, dust dancing in shafts of light. Daniel said, "I've seen what they've tried to hide. You're not wrong." His voice was steady, reassuring, but his eyes carried something Ethan couldn't place. Ethan leaned forward, eager. "Then help me uncover it." Daniel smirked faintly, sliding a folder across the table. Inside were photographs, official documents, and names Ethan had only whispered in his own notes. Daniel said smoothly, "Together, we can expose them." Yet as Ethan scanned the papers, he felt an unease he couldn't silence. Something about Daniel's calmness rang false, as if he was too willing, too prepared. Ethan muttered, "Trust is earned, not handed." Ethan drove for hours through the barren desert, headlights cutting through the vast emptiness. He arrived at a rundown farmhouse where Margaret Hughes, a 62-year-old woman with weathered features, lived in silence. She hesitated before letting him in. Margaret whispered, "I saw it that night." The sky split open. Her hands trembled as she clutched an old photograph of strange lights above her land. Ethan listened, noting her voice was cracked with both fear and exhaustion. He asked gently, "Why didn't you tell anyone?" Tears welled as she replied, "Because they told me I'd vanish if I spoke again." Ethan's chest tightened. The weight of her confession was heavier than evidence on paper. This wasn't just a mystery. It was people's lives stolen in the shadows. Just before dawn, Ethan stood in the desert near Margaret's land, holding her photograph against the horizon. The vast sky above was streaked with pale light, but the emptiness felt wrong. He crouched near the sand where scorch marks formed a circle, his heart pounding as he realized it matched the witness accounts. Suddenly, headlights pierced the distance, approaching fast. Ethan shoved the photo into his pocket and whispered, "They know I'm here." Dust swirled as a black SUV rolled to a stop. Men in dark suits stepped out, their movements sharp and practiced. Ethan knew the evidence he sought was real, but it was being erased before his eyes. He clenched his fists, vowing not to run. This was no longer about finding truth. It was about surviving it. Morning fog clung to the riverbank as Ethan Carter waited beneath the rusted truss bridge, breath ghosting in the chill. Claire Morgan arrived late, eyes wary behind smudged lenses, a folded file tucked under her coat. Claire said, "I ran the coordinates through old AA logs, and there's a blind corridor nobody talks about." Ethan felt a jolt of purpose as barges droned past like slow beasts in the gray. He said, "If aircraft vanish there, someone built the fog to hide them." Claire's hand shook as she opened the file to reveal flight plans redacted into near silence. She said, "Every path diverts for 6 minutes, then reappears as if nothing happened." Ethan traced the black bars with a fingertip and imagined screams swallowed by static. He said, "We follow that corridor on the ground and see who meets us at the edge." Claire nodded, resignation settling like dew, and whispered, "If we do this, there is no going back." They drove the blind corridor by map, skirting chain link and scrub until the land flattened into abandoned tarmac. Wind hissed across cracked runway lines that pointed at nowhere and everywhere. Claire said, "This airfield was decommissioned on paper, but someone budgets its electricity." Ethan crouched at a fuse box and found fresh padlocks polished by recent hands. He said, "They stage transfers here, 6 minutes at a time." A low hum bled from an underground vent, metallic and wrong for empty places. Claire lifted a panel and exposed fiber lines braided like nerves toward the horizon. She said, "Data leaves faster than planes can." Ethan's pulse quickened as he pictured signals jumping a dark lattice across the desert. He said, "Follow the cable, and we follow the lie." The wind rose, scouring their tracks as if the land wanted them gone. Daniel Cross called from a blocked number and sounded relieved to find them alive. He met them at a storage unit near the river, smile practiced, coat immaculate against the grit. Daniel said, "You were right about the airfield, but you're chasing the wrong branch." He set a crate down and lifted out binders thick with stamped seals. Claire watched him with a tilt that meant doubt carried weight. Ethan said, "You always have what we need, and it always fits too well." Daniel laughed softly and produced a badge that would open places ordinary men never saw. Daniel said, "You mistrust the key because you love the door." The phrase slid like oil as Ethan scanned a memo and found a name he had begged the past to return. He said, "Dr. Lena Avery was declared dead 10 years ago." Daniel's eyes flashed and he said, "The dead are convenient, and convenience is policy." They found Margaret Hughes at dusk on her porch, watching the horizon as if it might apologize. She held a weathered shoebox and would not speak until the sun touched the windmills. Margaret said, "I kept what they did not know I had." Inside lay a charred flight patch, a child's drawing of lights over corn, and a cassette labeled with trembling letters. Claire threaded the tape through a battered player, and the porch filled with a pilot's panic strangled by interference. Ethan said, "This was the night your sky split." Margaret nodded, tears tracking dust into clean lines. She said, "My husband filmed it, and then he was gone." Wind pressed the screen door until it rattled like failing restraint. Ethan felt guilt rise because the truth he chased was wreckage other people had to live in. He said, "We will carry it now, and we will not set it down." The cassette carried a burst of coordinates, a tower call sign, and a phrase repeated like a prayer. Claire said, Echo Lantern, repeat transmission," and the line went dead again. Ethan cross-referenced the call sign with Daniel's binder and felt the floor vanish under reason. He said, "Echo Lantern is a procurement shell for Senator Harlow's committee." Thunder muttered beyond the hills, as if the weather had been listening all along. Claire pressed her palm flat on the page and looked like someone bracing against a wave. She said, "This ties the cover up to the people writing the laws." Ethan tasted metal and memory, and the sting of being right where fear said not to stand. He said, "We are not chasing shadows anymore, we are in their lamp." Claire exhaled and answered, "Then let's burn the map and walk straight in." Senator Richard Harlow stood before a line of cameras in a polished press room, his silver hair immaculate under studio lights. He said, "Rumors of unidentified craft are fabrications." His voice was firm, reassuring, a shield against unrest. Ethan Carter watched a live broadcast from Claire's apartment, rage boiling beneath his calm surface. He said, "He's building a lie for the world to swallow whole." Claire whispered, "And I'll believe him because fear is easier than doubt." Harlow's hand pressed the podium, as if anchoring truth by force. Behind the screen, Ethan saw not a statesman, but the keeper of secrets, controlling the narrative with precision. He clenched his fists and said, "If he silences the airwaves, then we must speak louder." Claire nodded, her eyes clouded with the knowledge that louder voices often vanished first. Under cover of night, Ethan and Claire slipped past rusted gates into a decommissioned military site. Floodlights hummed faintly, casting long shadows over barbed wire. Claire whispered, "If they catch us here, we vanish." Ethan's jaw tightened as he moved toward a bunker door marked "Restricted." The lock had been replaced recently, gleaming against corroded metal. Ethan said, "They still use this place." Inside, the air was cold, carrying the scent of dust and oil. Racks of old computers blinked faintly, their screens alive with coded transmissions. Claire gasped. "It's still active." Ethan leaned close to the glowing text, heart pounding. He said, "They're not erasing the truth, they're archiving it." The weight of thousands of secrets pressed around them, suffocating yet exhilarating. Inside the bunker, Claire's voice trembled as she read scrolling code. She said, "It's a record of abductions, everyone erased from the public eye." Ethan's pulse quickened as he printed fragments, papers spitting into his hands, like forbidden scripture. He whispered, "This is proof they can't bury." Yet her fear grew sharper than the paper edges. Claire said, "We can't hold this and live." Ethan snapped back, "Then we hold it until it burns." Their whispers bounced against cold steel walls, as if the bunker itself remembered screams. For a moment, Ethan saw her doubt reflected in his own shadow, but obsession drowned hesitation. Claire finally said, "If you fall, I will finish it." Her words carved trust into stone, though fear laced every syllable. Ethan looked at her with gratitude wrapped in silence. Later, Ethan stood frozen as Michael Carter, his estranged brother, appeared in the dim corridor. Michael, 41, clean-cut in a tailored coat, smiled faintly and said, "You always had to play the savior." Ethan's chest tightened, betrayal cutting deeper than steel doors. He whispered, "You knew all along." Michael nodded, calm and cold. "I was paid to keep the balance. Secrets are safer than chaos." Ethan's voice cracked with anger. "You sold your soul for silence." Michael stepped closer, lowering his voice to a blade. "No, I sold yours." Claire's breath caught behind Ethan as she realized the betrayer was bound to blood. The silence between brothers was heavier than any locked vault, thick with grief and fury. Ethan whispered, "I won't let you bury me too." The confrontation ended in silence as Daniel Cross entered the bunker, his voice echoing with false warmth. "I told you I'd bring you closer," he said, eyes sharp with hidden amusement. Ethan's stomach twisted, betrayal deepening. Daniel laid a hand on Michael's shoulder, cementing their alliance. Claire whispered, "You played us from the start." Daniel smiled. "Truth is currency, and you're bankrupt." Ethan's rage built like thunder, but beneath it was clarity. The keeper of secrets had layers, and Daniel was one of them. He muttered, "You've made one mistake, you left us alive." The men exchanged glances, their confidence ringing hollow in the cold air. Claire gripped Ethan's arm, whispering, "Then we use what we have before they take it." In the shadows of deception, the war over truth sharpened its edge. The bunker's silence shattered as Michael Carter revealed his allegiance fully. He said coldly, "You were always chasing shadows, Ethan. I was the shadow." Ethan's face tightened with grief heavier than anger, and he whispered, "You betrayed blood." Michael's calm mask cracked, a flicker of guilt hidden beneath his hardened gaze. "I chose order over chaos," he said. Claire's breath trembled, and she stepped forward. "You chose power over family." The air pulsed with the weight of betrayal, heavier than steel doors. Ethan's chest ached, yet his resolve sharpened. He said, "Then you are the first wall I'll break." Michael's voice softened, a ghost of brotherhood lingering. "You won't survive breaking it." The corridor's flickering lights hummed like a verdict as two brothers stood between past loyalty and present war. Later, Ethan and Claire found a locked archive vault deeper underground. The steel door bore scars of forced entries past. Claire said, "This is where the victims disappear." Ethan's heart raced as he forced it open with shaking hands. Inside were shelves stacked with files, photographs and recordings. At the center sat a folder labeled Dr. Lena Avery. Ethan opened it, his breath catching. It revealed she had been alive years after her declared death, vanished into government custody. He muttered, "She was silenced because she knew." Claire touched the folder with trembling fingers, whispering, She was the victim. Ethan's resolve solidified into steel. He said, "Then her silence is our voice." The vault's cold air wrapped around them like the presence of every missing soul still screaming. Daniel Cross appeared suddenly in the vault doorway, clapping softly, his smirk cutting through the silence. He said, "Well done, you've dug straight to the bone." Ethan spun, fury burning. "You fed us breadcrumbs to keep us here." Daniel's smile sharpened. "I gave you purpose. Without me you'd be chasing smoke." Claire snapped, "You gave us lies wrapped in ribbons." Daniel stepped closer, shadows swallowing his face. "Lies, truths, it's all leverage." Ethan's voice cracked with rage. "You call betrayal leverage?" Daniel's eyes gleamed as he said, "Betrayal is proof of trust once given." Ethan felt his stomach twist as he realized Daniel had never intended to hide. He wanted them to know he was the spider at the center of the web. Suddenly, Claire cried out as two black-clad operatives seized her from behind, dragging her toward the vault's exit. Ethan shouted, "Let her go," but was forced back by Daniel's men. Claire struggled, her voice breaking. "Don't stop, finish it." Ethan's pulse thundered, torn between saving her and preserving the evidence. Daniel whispered, "Your ally has become a liability." "Choices, Mr. Carter, define heroes." Ethan's fists shook, rage clouding reason. Claire's eyes met his one last time, calm despite the grip bruising her arms. She said, "The truth matters more than me." Ethan felt his soul split as the operatives pulled her into the shadows. He roared, "I'll burn this place before I let her sacrifice vanish." Daniel only smiled, his trap complete. When the vault was silent again, Ethan crouched amid the scattered files, hands trembling over photographs of abductees. His chest heaved with grief and fury, but his eyes hardened. He whispered, "They want me broken. They'll get me burning." He shoved documents into his leather bag, every page a weapon against silence. The storm outside rumbled faintly through cracks in the earth above, as if echoing his vow. Ethan said, "Claire gave me her voice, and I'll make it thunder." He slipped the folder labeled Echo Lantern into his coat, the symbol of every erased victim. His steps echoed as he left the vault, a soldier forged from betrayal. He muttered, "This is no longer their war, it's mine." The silence that followed was heavier than stone, but Ethan no longer felt its weight. The night bled into dawn as Ethan Carter ran through the city's alleys, leather bag thumping against his side, the stolen files his only shield. Black SUVs prowled the streets, headlights sweeping like predators. Ethan whispered, "They won't stop until I'm erased." His breath came ragged as boots echoed closer. Radios crackled with orders, a net drawing tighter. He ducked into a narrow passage, but a drone buzzed overhead, its red eye blinking like judgment. Ethan said, "They're choking the air itself." The city's neon glow flickered, powerless against the tightening darkness. His pulse thundered as he swore, "I will not die nameless." Each shadow felt alive, each siren like a countdown. As men in suits closed in, Ethan clutched the bag and whispered to Claire's memory, "I'll carry it until the last breath." Hours later, Ethan and Claire, rescued after her capture, stood at a desert ridge overlooking a crater site hidden from maps. Claire said, "This is where the truth touched ground." Wind howled as Ethan crouched, brushing sand from blackened debris. He whispered, "Not a myth, proof." Claire's eyes welled, seeing twisted metal half buried like bones. "They've been here all along," she said. Ethan lifted a shard, its surface humming faintly, heat radiating, though the cold air. He muttered, "This could burn their lies alive." The horizon flared with sunlight, but their shadows stretched long, fragile. Claire touched his shoulder, whispering, "The world won't believe until it bleeds." Ethan clenched the shard, his resolve turning iron. He said, "Then let's cut them open." The betrayal tightened as Daniel Cross intercepted them at the crater's edge, his coat whipping in the desert wind. He said, "You've taken what doesn't belong to you." Ethan faced him, fury boiling. Truth doesn't belong to anyone. Daniel's smirk was ice. You think exposing this will save lives? It will end them. Claire stepped forward, her voice breaking. You've murdered truth with your silence. Daniel raised his hand, signaling men who emerged from the dunes like phantoms. Ethan's pulse thundered. He said, "You won't bury this." Daniel leaned close, his words a hiss. "I already buried you. You just haven't noticed yet." For the first time, Ethan saw the darkness in Daniel's eyes wasn't control. It was hunger. Margaret Hughes returned unexpectedly, her frail form framed against the desert sun. She held an old camcorder, her voice trembling. This has always been my curse." She pressed play, revealing footage of glowing craft splitting the sky years before. Ethan's heart clenched. He whispered, "You've carried this weight alone." Margaret's eyes filled with grief. "It took my husband, my life, and left me with ghosts." Claire touched her arm softly. "You gave us more than evidence. You gave us truth wrapped in pain." Ethan said, "Your tragedy is their foundation. We'll tear it down." Margaret's tears streaked her cheeks as the camcorder flickered. "Then don't waste what cost me everything." The desert wind carried her words like scripture etched in sand. The storm finally broke when Ethan was seized, black-clad operatives pinning him against armored trucks. Claire screamed his name, but was dragged back into shadows. Daniel Cross stepped forward, slow and deliberate. He said, "You want to confront the Keeper of Secrets? Consider this your invitation." Ethan spat blood, his jaw set. "Chains can't bind truth." Daniel leaned closer, whispering, "But they can bind the man who carries it." Ethan was thrown into the vehicle, the bag torn from his grasp. He muttered, "Take the bag, you'll never take the fire." Claire's cries echoed into the desert night as the doors slammed shut. Ethan whispered to himself in the dark, "If I die in their hands, I'll die with the truth alive in mine." Ethan Carter sat in a dim underground chamber, wrists shackled to a steel chair, the echo of dripping water filling the silence. Senator Richard Harlow entered, his polished shoes clicking on concrete. Harlow said, "You've dug yourself into a grave of your own design." Ethan's eyes burned, his voice low but steady. "A grave is still soil, and soil feeds roots." Harlow smirked, adjusting his cufflinks. "Your crusade dies here, and the world will never know how close it came." Ethan leaned forward, chains rattling. "You can bury men, but you can't bury memory." Harlow's calm mask cracked briefly, his voice sharpening. "Memory without proof is nothing but madness." Ethan whispered, "Then madness will carry the truth until proof is found." The tension in the chamber felt like steel, drawn to breaking point. Michael Carter stepped into the chamber, his expression unreadable, torn between brotherhood and betrayal. He said, "You could have walked away, Ethan. You could have lived." Ethan's voice shook with anger and sorrow. "I could never live in silence." Michael's jaw tightened as he placed a hand on Ethan's shoulder. "I wanted to protect you from this," he said quietly. Ethan whispered, "You wanted to protect yourself from the truth." Claire's cries echoed faintly from another room, her defiance still alive. Ethan met his brother's eyes and said, "You've chained yourself to their lies, but chains rust." Michael's gaze faltered, his voice breaking. "You don't understand. I had no choice." Ethan answered, "You always had a choice. You just feared what it cost." The sound of heavy doors echoed as Claire Morgan was dragged into the chamber, her glasses cracked, but her spirit unbroken. She whispered fiercely, "They can cage us, but not silence us." Ethan's chest swelled with pride at her strength. Daniel Cross entered, smiling coldly. "The informant plays her role well," he said. Claire spat, "And you play a coward's." Daniel set a file down before Ethan, pages redacted to black bars. "Proof is fragile," Daniel said smoothly. Ethan met his gaze. "Then, so are you." Claire leaned closer to Ethan, whispering, "We still have what matters." The guards shifted, unease crawling through the air as if the weight of conviction was heavier than iron bars. Chaos erupted as alarms wailed through the chamber. Margaret Hughes' old camcorder, hidden in Claire's coat, had begun to play, its screen flickering with undeniable footage of the craft splitting the sky. The guards froze, their training fractured by disbelief. Ethan shouted, "This is their truth, you can't unsee it." Harlow lunged for the camcorder, but Michael hesitated, his mask finally cracking. Claire screamed, "The world must see this." Ethan's voice rose above the sirens. "Every lie bleeds when truth is shown the light." The chamber filled with clashing shouts and the flicker of alien light on human faces. For the first time, the shadows that had ruled were pierced by proof too powerful to bury. Ethan staggered free from his chains, the alarms still screaming. He held Claire's hand as they stood before the shattered order. Harlow and Daniel retreated into shadows, their empire cracked but not destroyed. Ethan whispered, "The truth breathes now." Claire, battered but resolute, replied, "But at what cost?" Outside, dawn broke, bleeding light into the chamber. Ethan raised the camcorder, pointing it toward the faint glow of the rising sun. He said, "Every secret dies in time, but today it dies with us." His voice carried like a warning etched into history. Claire whispered, "Then let them hear it." The two stood together, exhausted but unbroken, as the light consumed the darkness one final time.